Alright, so in the last video we looked at declaring variables with var, let, and const. We looked at some of the naming conventions, some of the rules of creating variables and naming them. Now what I want to do is talk a little bit about the types of data that we store in those variables. So we're going to look at a couple slides and then we're going to jump in and we're going to write a little bit of code to explain this a little further. Now in JavaScript, there's a bunch of different types, but there's basically two types of data types, and that's primitive and reference. All right, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do want you to have kind of a basic understanding of it. With primitive data types, the data is stored directly in the location that the variable accesses. It's stored on the stack. When you access primitive data, you access it by its actual value. All right, now reference types are objects that are accessed by reference. So the data isn't actually stored in the variable. It's stored on what's called the heap, which has to do with dynamically allocated memory. And like I said, I don't want to get too deep into this because it can get really advanced, and I want you to get the gist of it, but I want to still focus on writing JavaScript, not all of the inner workings. But it is quite interesting and maybe something that you want to look into after taking this course and after you have a really good grasp on the language itself. So in JavaScript, there's 6 primitive data types. Okay, first we have strings, which are sequences of characters. They can be letters, numbers, symbols, whatever. We have the number type, which is just that, a number. Now it's important to know that integers, decimals, floats, these are all considered numbers in JavaScript, okay? Unlike some other languages where there's, decimal types, there's floats, and they're treated as separate types. In JavaScript, these are all considered numbers, okay? Which makes it makes things much easier. So we also have a Boolean type, which is true or false. We have null, which is an intentional empty value. And then we have undefined, which is a variable that has not been assigned a value. Okay, so if you just declare a variable but don't put a value inside of it, it's going to be undefined by default. Okay, all variables are undefined by default. Now I'll talk more about the differences in null and undefined in a little bit. In addition to these 5, we also have symbols now with ES6. Symbols are a little more complicated than the rest, so I'll get into those later on when we get into, when we really get into ES6. All right, so reference types. Reference types are not primitive. They're not accessed by the actual value. They're accessed by reference, okay? And they're also considered objects. So arrays, object literals, functions, dates, and anything else you can store is going to be a reference type. Okay, we also have object wrappers for strings and numbers, which we'll get into later. So JavaScript is what's known as a dynamically typed language, and this means that the data types are associated with the actual values and not the variables themselves. So the same variable can hold multiple types, meaning it can hold a string and then it can be set to a number with no errors or issues, and it's absolutely fine. Whereas in most languages which are statically typed, like Java, C#, this isn't allowed. In fact, many languages you actually have to define what type of value is going to be in that variable. So you would have to write variable something, string, or int, or float, or whatever type would be allowed in that variable. Okay, this is much different than how JavaScript works. Now, there are technologies that can turn JavaScript into a statically typed language. For the most part, TypeScript is the most popular. It's actually a superset of JavaScript. And what that means is that it's everything that JavaScript is plus more. It has extra features, and static typing is one of those added features. Okay, we also have other modules and add-ons like Flow or Flow.js, which can give us typing in JavaScript. But at its core, it's very dynamic in nature. Alright, so what I want to do now is jump into VS Code, and we're going to create some variables that hold different types. We're also going to take a look at the type of operator, which classifies value types. Alright guys, so this is going to be pretty simple. We're basically just going to create some variables with different types, and we're going to just take a look at those types using the operator type of. Okay, so let's start off with primitive types. So we'll say primitive. Okay, so we have strings. So we'll say, I'm going to use const here. So let's say const name equals, and we'll say John Doe. All right, so what I want to do now is just do a console.log, and we can use this type of operator. So we'll do type of space and then put in the name of the variable. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and it'll run. And down here in the console, notice that it says string. All right, so it's just telling us that this is a string. Next, we'll create a number. So we'll say age, and obviously numbers do not have quotes around them. Okay, so if we put quotes around it, it'll be a string. In fact, I'll show you that in a second. But let's go ahead and change this to age and save, and we get number. All right, now if I were to put quotes around this and save, we get string. All right, another primitive type is Boolean. So we'll say const, let's call this one has kids, and we'll set this to true. Okay, Booleans do not have quotes around them. If you put a quote around it, it'll just be a string that says true. All right, so let's change this to has kids and save, and you can see that we get Boolean. All right, so the next is null. So let's say const, and we'll set a variable called car equal to null. And then we'll go down here and say car and save, and notice that we get object. So in the JavaScript world, this is actually kind of a mistake, kind of a bug. And let me just pull this up just to show you, because it's a little tough to explain. So if we were to just Google type of null is object, you'll see right here in Google, it says the first implementation of JavaScript values were represented as a type tag and a value with the type tag for objects being 0. And null was represented as the null pointer. As a result, null had 0 as a type tag, hence the bogus type of return value. All right, so it's essentially a bug. It doesn't mean that null is in fact an object. It is a primitive type, okay? But you will get object if you go ahead and run it through type of. All right, so the next primitive value we have is undefined. So for undefined, we're actually going to use let, because we'll get an error if we do not define a constant. So let's say undefined. Let's just say test, I guess. And we'll go ahead and say type of test and save, and we get undefined. Okay, we also have symbol, which, as I said, is part of ES6. So symbol is a new primitive type. So we'll say const sim equals symbol. And we'll change this to sim and save, and we get symbol. All right, so those are all the primitive types in JavaScript. So now let's take a look at a couple reference types. All right, and these are going to all come back as objects. So we'll start with an array. So we'll say const, call this hobbies, we'll say movies, music, and then let's do a type of hobbies and save, and you can see that we get object as the type. All right, we can also do an object literal. So let's do address. We'll just put city and state. And then we'll change this type of to address. And save, and we get object. All right, last one I'll do is a date. So let's do const today, and we'll set it to the date constructor. So we need to use the new keyword. And we're going to get into dates and times. So we're going to dedicate a whole lecture to it. But let's just go ahead and do that. Actually, I'll show you what that looks like if we console log it as well. All right, and then we'll just pop that in here as well and save. So that's what the date looks like, and then you can see it is an object. All right, so those are some of the reference types. But just remember, these are the 6 primitive types in JavaScript. These are This is what you actually access when you set this variable to this string. This is the data that's actually being accessed. With these reference types, they're being accessed from memory as a reference. Alright, so in the next video we're going to take a look at type conversion, where we can turn a string into a number or vice versa. Also look at something called type coercion. Alright, so I will see you in the next lecture. Alright, so we've talked about the different types of data in JavaScript, primitive types, reference types. Now what we want to do is look at type conversion. So basically taking a variable and changing the data type. And you're going to run into cases where you're going to want to do this. For example, if you're taking input from a form and you're putting that into a variable, that's going to be a string by default. And then if you want to apply calculations to it, you're going to want to parse it. You're going to want to change it into a number type. So there's a couple different ways to do each type of conversion, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now I'm going to make this easier by just creating one variable and to go through all these instead of creating all these different variables like we did in the last one. So we're just going to define or declare this val using let. Okay, make sure you use let because we didn't assign a value, so if you use const you're going to get an error. So first thing I want to show you is number to string. So first of all I'm going to set val equal to a number. And then down here, we're going to output a couple things. Okay, so first is going to be the actual value. Next is going to be the type. So we'll use type of. And then I'm going to do console.log, and I'm going to take that value, and I'm going to call the .length property. Okay, now length only works on strings because it's a string method, it's a string property. It gives you the number of characters in a string. So let's go ahead and save this and run it and see what we get. So first thing we get is 5, which is the value. That's fine. Number is the type, and then val.length gives us undefined because we're trying to get length from a number, which doesn't work. So if we want to convert this into a string, what we can do is wrap it in the string function, okay, capital S string. So if I go ahead and save this and run it, now you'll see that 5 it's not blue anymore, it's black, representing a string. The type of gives us string, and then it gives us 1 for the length. So if we were to put 555, then we'll get 3 for the length. So that's how we can convert a number to a string. We can also do, and I'm just going to keep using val here, whenever I put a new val, it's going to overwrite the one before it. So let's go ahead and do string around an expression. So we'll say 4 plus 4 and save, and you'll see that we'll get 8 for the value, the type of is string, and then we get 1 for the length, okay, because it's obviously 8. So that's converting a number to a string. Let's convert a Boolean to a string. So we'll say val equals string bool, true. So if we save that, you can see that we get true as a string, and we get 4 from the length. Let's do a date to a string. Okay, so we can say val equals, and we'll do new date. Save that, and it gives us this. This is now a string, it's not a date object. You can see right here, and it gives us 57 because it counts everything that's here as a character. Okay, and then let's do an array. So we'll say array to string. So we'll just put in some numbers here and save, and it actually gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 separated by commas as a string. It gives us 7 as the length. Now, in addition to the string function, we also have the toString method. So for instance, we can say val equals, and we'll say 5 dot toString. Okay, we can also do that. So if we save that, we get 5 as a string. If we wanted to do a Boolean, we'll say true dot to string, and we get true as a string. So you can use this, or you can use this. So now let's take a look at turning strings to numbers. So just like we have the string function, we have the number function. So I'm going to say val equals, and let's set this to, let's see, we'll set it to a string of 5. And if I save that, this is all going to work. Now if I turn it to a number, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out the length, which is a property that only works on strings, and I'm going to change it to a method that only works on numbers. So we'll say console.log, let's say val.toFixed. ToFixed, just it allows us to specify decimals. For instance, if we wanted our number to have 2 decimals, we could put 2. If we leave it blank, it'll just be no decimals. But the point is it only works on numbers. So let's save, and you'll see we're going to get this error because we actually have a string here and we're calling ToFixed. So what I'm going to do is wrap this in number and save, and now you'll see that we get 5 as a number, type of gives us number, and ToFixed gives us 5. If I were to put a 2 in here and save, we'll get 2 decimal points, but that's besides the point. I just want to show you that this is actually a number. So let's try to set a Boolean to a number and see what happens. So if we say number true, that's actually going to give us a 1. Okay, if we parse a true value as a number, it gives us 1. And on the other hand, I'm sure you can guess, if we try to parse a false as a number, that gives us 0. And I bet you can guess what null will give us. Let me say null. Oops. I can't type. So null also gives us 0. Now, what if we do, what if we do hello? What on earth is that going to give us as a number? Let's save, and it gives us this NaN. Okay, so NaN is an actual value that stands for not a number. Okay, so this is what happens when a value tries to get parsed as a number but can't. The same thing will happen if we do, let's say we do an array. So we do that, save that, that's also going to give us not a number. So it's a special value type, or not type, but an actual value in JavaScript. Okay, now just like with string, there's additional ways to do this. So we have a method called parseInt. Actually, I'm just going to say val equals parseInt, and we'll pass in here 100. Okay, 100 as a string. So if we save that, you can see now we get 100 as a number. Now, if I go ahead and I try to add some decimal points here, let's say 100.30, and save, notice that I'm still getting 100 because parseInt is just that. It's going to parse it as an integer. If we want to add decimals, then we want to use something called parsefloat. So we're going to say parsefloat 100.30. Whoop, should be a string or a number. Yeah, 100.30, and save, and we're getting 100.3. Okay, by default it's going to give you just 1 decimal. Well, if we do 31, obviously that will give us 31, but if it's a 0, it'll just give us 1. But we're using ToFixed down here, so if we want to put 2 in here and save, it'll actually give us 100.30. Okay, so just remember, if you want to use decimals, you want to use this parsefloat. Okay, so that is type conversion. Now we also have something called type coercion, which is basically when we do the same thing. We take one type and change it to another, but we don't actually do it. JavaScript does it for us. So if we try to add together, let's say we'll do val let's do const val1 equals 5, const val2 equals 6, and then we'll do const sum equals val1 plus val2. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and we'll console.log the sum, and let's console.log, whoops, the type. So if we save that, I'm just going to comment all this stuff out. So if we save that, we get 11, obviously. They're both numbers. They're being added as numbers. But what if we were to change one of these to a string? All right, so we can either put quotes around it, or we can do string like that. Whoops, and turn it into a string. So let's save that and see what we get. So we get 56. So what happened here is the JavaScript engine saw that we have two values that we're adding together. One is a string, one is a number, and it took it upon itself to change one to a string and add it. Okay, it actually changed the 6 to a string and then basically concatenated it, put one in front of the other, so made it 56. So that's an example of type coercion, and there's a lot of different cases where this happens, but this is just one of them. And this 56 is a string. Okay, now what we could do if we wanted that 56 to be a number is we could run it through, or we could use parseInt, or we could use number like that, and then save, and then we get 56 as a number. All right, so in the next video we're going to look at more with numbers, and we're going to take a look at the math object. When you deal with JavaScript, a lot of times you deal with calculations and math, so there's an object that can help us do things like round numbers, get square roots, things like that. So we're going to do that in the next video. Hey guys, in this video we're going to start to work with numbers and also the math object. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set two numbers. So we'll say const num1, and let's set this to 100. Let's set num2 to 50, and I'm going to initialize a val variable, okay, because we're going to be basically mutating this variable as we go along. All right, and then down at the bottom here, I just want to console.log the val. All right, so first thing I want to look at is just basic math. Okay, so we'll say simple math with numbers. So we can say we'll take that val and we'll set it to num1 plus num2, and this is very easy, very simple stuff, guys. I know that, but you know, this is for beginners to advanced, so we need to cover everything. So we'll save that, and obviously down here we're going to get 150. All right, so in addition to addition, of course, we can do, let's say, multiplication. Save that, we get 5,000. Let's do subtraction. We get 50. Let's do division. We get 2, and let's do the modulus operator, which will basically give us what's left over as a remainder. So if we save that, we get 0. All right, if I were to change this to, let's say, 60 and save, we're going to get 40. All right, and I don't excuse me, I don't actually use this modulus that much, but those are the basic math operators. Now, there's a math object we can use to do certain things like round, get the absolute, get the power of something, generate random numbers, things like that. So we're going to take a look at that. All right, so let's take that val and let's set that to, first of all, I want to do math.py. So math is an object, meaning that it has properties and methods. Okay, a property is basically like an attribute, and then a method is just a function. Okay, it's a function inside of an object. So pi, as you can probably guess, is just going to give us pi. If I save that, we're going to get the 3.141 whatever. We also have, and there's a few other ones that I'm not going to mention that I've never even thought about using. This is Euler's number, so math.e. Save that. That gives us this number here. And then we're going to look at some helpful methods. All right, so if you want to round a number, let's say val equals math.round. Oops. So round, and let's do we'll say 2.8. So that's going to round to 3. If we do 2.4, that's going to round to 2. Now, there's going to be times when you want to specify if you want to round up or down. So for that, we have ceil and floor. So for instance, if we want to round up, we'll do ceil. And even if we put 2.4 in here and save, we're going to get 3. All right, and then at the same time, we have math.floor, where if we put 2.8 and save, we're going to get 2. Okay. Now, if we want to square something, we can say math.square root, or SQRT. So let's say we want to square 64, save, we get 8. All right, if we want to get the absolute number, so we'll say math.abs. That'll give us the absolute number. So if we put a negative number in here, it's going to give us the positive version of it, which is the absolute version of it. All right, if we want to get the power of something, we can say val equals math.pow. All right, so let's say we want 8 to the second and save, and we get 64. Okay, we also have min and max. So let's say val equals math.min. And then this actually takes in some comma separated values. So let's just put some random numbers in here. And we'll save. And it's just going to return whatever the minimum is, and that's 1. And we can also put negative numbers in here. So obviously if I put -2, that's going to be the min. Okay, and as you could probably guess, we also have a max method. So if I change this to max and save, we get 55, which is the max number. All right, so we also have a helpful method called random. So math.random. Now, what this does is it gives us a random decimal. So if I keep reloading here, you'll see it'll keep changing. Now, in a lot of cases, you're going to want a random whole number. So just using math.random isn't going to help you. So a solution to this would be to say val equals, and we'll use the math.random, which will generate a random decimal, and then we'll multiply it by the max number we want. So let's say 20. So if I go ahead and save this, and we look down here, this is going to give us a random number with a decimal between 0 and 19. All right, now you're probably going to want it from 1 to 20, so all you would do is just add on a 1 to that. Okay, so now it'll be 1 through 20, but you probably don't want the decimals. So what you would do is wrap it in math.floor. All right, so we're going to round it down. So we'll go ahead and wrap that, wrap the whole thing, save, and now we're going to get a random number between 1 and 20, always. All right, so this is something that you see. It's very, very common in JavaScript. All right, guys, so in the next video, we're going to work with strings. So we're going to look at concatenation. We're going to look at some of the different methods to change a string to uppercase, or to replace something in a string, to pluck something out of a string, how to turn a string into an array, things like that, things that are used all the time in projects. All right, so I know that this stuff isn't as exciting as building something, as building a project, but it's all fundamental knowledge that you need in order to be able to do that and actually understand what's going on and not just do a code along, you know. So we will get into projects, but we need to cover these fundamentals first. So that's it. I will see you in the next video.